Hey, what's going on, my friends? We are here. It's Monday. Oh, yeah, week 2, just kind of wrapping itself up with Monday Night Football. We're going to be doing all things lineup study today. I like to look back before we can look forward. So we're going to be looking at the Sunday main slate. We'll look at some showdown stuff another time, but I really want to dissect some of these things. And then probably the latter half of today's stream and then most of Tuesday, we will do a lot more in lineup rewind. So today's stream is brought to you by Fancy Cruncher, of course, our partner site where all of our members get $20 to use on this beautiful beast over here. So you get $20 to use on this site as one of our members. And our goal is basically just support all the Fancy Cruncher users and our users using it. And here we go. We're going to dive into lineup study. What I did is I brought up the $40 150 max. My goal is to review all of the 150 maxers, not all of them, but a handful of the top pros that you guys know. What I don't try to do is bring up other people from other companies that I might, I don't know, they just don't like that, right? Like they'll review their own stuff for their own members if they want to, but I don't want to put anybody on blast. So I know people ask for certain names and personalities. Sometimes I'm only going to do a select few each week. I also think that that's super helpful because what I want to do is highlight some of these people we know have done well for years, and we want to see how they are doing over the course of the 18 weeks. If we just pick and choose, this week I'm looking at petty theft, the next week I'm not, 3 weeks later I am again, and so on and so forth. I think if we're studying these professional players, studying these players that have done well, won million makers in the past, things like that, and we're only studying them on certain weeks, we're not really getting a broad strokes view of how they're doing and what they're doing. So we're going to try to, identify. There's about, I'd say probably 15 or so that will kind of rotate through. And we never will have time to do all of them every single stream, but that's okay. We're going to do what we can. So today, this is a large screen. All right. So I'm just going to zoom in like this. So my face is gone. Don't sweat it. I'm out of here. And what I'm going to basically be doing is just kind of giving you a full view of all things here in FC, and we're just going to get to work. So a few things we look for when we did this in week 1. We were looking at stack size. We wanted to see the type, right? So was it two player stacks, quarterback, wide receiver? Was it a 4-player stack? And when it was 4s, were they including 2 wide receivers from the same team? Did it have the tight end for the opposing player? Was it only wide receivers included in the stack itself? How did this work out? And you can see right here, the first one here, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Gerald Everett, and then Derrick Henry, running back on the other side. So we want to look at this. We want to look at the exposures. That is a hot topic we've been discussing through August. And again, we're going to continue it here through the month of September. We are looking at, what the exposures are for these pros, like how high is their exposure cap? And you can kind of identify it. Sometimes you'll see like 6 different players have a 37% ownership. And it's like, okay, well, then they probably went through. And when they set up their advanced settings here, they went through their advanced options, general, and they set this up and it said 37% for, their global exposure settings. So we're going to see if we can identify some of those things and take advantage of this information. We want to try to emulate it. Let me post a link here in the YouTube chat for everybody. You can there you go. I just post that in chat and I'll just pin that there. And then that sits there for everybody. Cool. All right. So first one. All right. We're looking for the first 150 max that are banked. And here we go. Cheese is good. Matter of fact, in week 1, this player was also inside the top 20. I don't think they finished this high, but that's cool. That's kind of cool to see. We got another person who was profitable here. So cheese is good right here. Oh, actually, hold on. I want to look at overview. Here's where I know if they've won or not. So overall, cheese is good. Made $4,210 in this contest. This is the $40 150 max. It's a little bit flatter payout structure. We're looking at about 12.5% to first place. And I believe the top 10 ends up being like 40% or 35% or so. And then it flattens out a ton afterwards. So that 2 times min cash go down to, I think, the 20th percentile of the tournament, meaning 20 out of every 100 lineups. Okay. Anyways, so he profited $4,200. Not too shabby for a 150 max in a really big tournament like that. Well, by the way, this is not big as relative to the size of all the contests. And most of the ones I was entering this past week, I made a mistake. Probably was entering all the big ones too much. Mine were like 118,000. So this is a really good tournament structure. So I click on this button right here. It brings up all his lineups. You can see his top one right here was $5,900. Thank goodness he had that, because the rest of his lineups, he had, a net loss of 1,700. So that was a nice big one. So he profited 4,200 on the day. Now, how did he get there, and what did he do with his lineups? Interestingly enough, we've talked about this in the past, where when you have a smaller stack, where you're doing like a 2-player stack, it's often better suited for players like Kyler Murray, where they might just absolutely pepper DeAndre Hopkins and everybody else gets the ball spread out, and he can run the ball for 80 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson's another one that you'll use maybe unstacked, or you use like a 2-player stack. So all stacks are not created specific. They need to be created specific to the quarterback. Not all stacks are not created the same. They need to be created specifically to the quarterback you're using, and more so what contest you're using. So this was an interesting one to see Teddy B here as only a 2-player stack without anybody running it back on the other side. What that tells me is that Teddy Bridgewater specifically was someone that he was targeting, but that when he targeted him, he might not have wanted to go and grab someone from the other side of the football. So you can see it right now. You can look at it, and you've got nobody on the Jacksonville side running it back. Not James Robinson, not Laviska Shenault, not Marvin Jones Jr., and not DJ Chark. And part of that potentially is because there's no fantasy-focused production for any one of those wide receivers. It's kind of spread it out. They're going to throw the ball a good amount, but they're going to spread the ball out. You're not really sure who's going to pop off each week. So that was an interesting play right there. It ended up being his best overall lineup, scoring 196.62. Had very low ownership. And you go look at the players used here. And this is the other thing we're paying attention to. Thank you very much, Johnny Ortiz. Yeah, hit that like button if you're here checking us out for the first time. If you're a regular, hit that like button. You know the drill. And if you're new, please hit that sub button. We do about 10 to 12 hours of streams per week. We have another 4 or 5 hours worth of videos. We have like 10 per week also. So you're getting 15 to 20 videos and streams totally free on YouTube. We show off a lot of our content. We show off how to use Fantasy Cruncher, and we really just try to support the community best we can. And our goal is to have you want to join us because you want to be a part of what we're doing, not because you need us. We want to teach you no matter what. And hopefully you come by and you use our content, our tools, our projections, things like that, because you see other members winning and you think that, listen, this is a company that takes care of people, and I'm going to support that. So that's our goal. We're not really trying to sell anything here, just supporting people as I try to get comfortable in my chair today. What's up, CG? What's up, Chad? I see you all over there. Thank you very much for hanging out. Already 45 people tuned in the first several minutes of the show. That's pretty nice. So beyond the stack structures, we want to be paying attention to where's the exposure cap at each position. Do they use a general one? Is there a 25% cap where all of a sudden every single player is 25%, no more, no less, at the top end, right? You're having everybody at 25%. It's just that's the cap for all 5 positions. Or are we having like a 25% cap at quarterback, and then running backs 38 and wide receivers 16 or whatever? I don't know. So we're looking at this. Quarterbacks right here, really, really spread it out, got a ton of exposure. And listen, it ended up working. Out of his 5 Teddy Bridgewater lineups, one of them ended up being his best lineup. Derek Carr was only used 7 times, and he's all the way up there, second best lineup. So interestingly enough, one of the theories we tested throughout September was focusing on only several quarterbacks per week, the top 3, the top 5 projected quarterbacks, and totally ignoring the rest of the player pool, giving yourself, if you do 3 quarterbacks, giving yourself 50 chances with each stacked quarterback to hit the nuts, right? Kyler Murray goes absolutely bonkers. Well, you have 50 Kyler Murray stacks. Hopefully one of them takes off to the top of the standings. And we tested that all September, all August, and it was awesome. But I continue to see pro after pro do the exact opposite. They're like, Mitch, that's cool that you did that, but here's how I'm going to win money, right? So here we are again, another professional player with 150 darts thrown in here, and they had just complete buckshot approach, a scatter shot. There is just literally, it looks like every single quarterback was used at least once. Running backs are capped at 26%. Okay. I found this very interesting. I did look at 2 different players before I popped on here. Jesus Good was one. The other was Petty Theft. And, here we are. We've got a very, very flat structure here for running back, which is a position we've talked about in the past, where you can probably have a lot more running back exposure to your top several picks and then really lower the rest. But he didn't really do that. He's really got even the high end. And by the way, these are the chalkiest two on the slate, were his two highest owned. And look at his quarterbacks, by the way. Two chalkiest quarterbacks on the slate were his two highest owned as well. But their ownership level is capped almost at like what the industry projections were, right? It's almost like he took whatever the highest owned wide receiver, whatever the highest owned running back, whatever the highest owned position was, the player, the position. It's like he capped at that number and let everybody else go underneath it. Wide receivers at 16%, I actually thought was kind of flat. Here's, yes, neither do I, Adam. I'm not there. Just one dart doesn't do it for me. I'm with you. But heck, I mean, 5 did. So maybe you set a minimum or something. Wide receivers, I was thinking about this. If you set this up at anybody, if you don't allow 25%, you actually are going to run into some crunching issues unless you are locking quarterbacks and then crunching. Like lock Teddy B for his 5, lock Derek Carr for his 7. But if you were just to try to crunch 150 lineups and you had, all of your positions capped at like 20%, like this is kind of what it seems like. And then you go to a wide receiver and you tell the wide receiver position to be exposure of, what was that, 15%. And then you try to crunch, you might run into, let me put on some position stacks real quick. I think you potentially could run into some issues here. I was just thinking about it off the top of my head because of the numbers and the way it works out. Well, maybe not. Maybe that would end up working. Yeah, that worked fine. Okay. So never mind that. Strike that. I guess you could cap your position, your stacking targets at lower than 25%. Tight ends, 15%. Again, this is like Jared Cook was one of the higher projected owned for the weekend, and here he is. He is capped at 15%. Defense, very similar, 8% cap. Very, very spread out. I mean, I would venture to say there's close to 75, 80 players used here, and he did a really good job. So let's keep moving along. Next pro we have here made a little quiche. Bro here. I like reading his tweets and stuff. They're pretty cool. Quarterback, here we go. Spreading them out, way spread out. I mean, we've got 12 picks here. I was looking at his. Now, what he did is something that I would personally do as well. I'm not trying to get one lineup of 3 different quarterbacks. Like, I'd rather take those 3 random one off quarterback lineups and just give all 3 of them to a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, or giving those 3 single lineup exposures to Ryan Tannehill. So that instead of 6, I have 9. Instead of 8, I have 11, so on and so forth. So that I at least have like 5, 6, 7 quarterback lineups for the ones that I use. Now we have basically just, this is kind of a who's who of who the highest projected quarterbacks are. They're all at the top end. Running backs, it was very much what we saw from Cheese is Good. It was the highest owned guys were 2 of his highest owned. The highest owned in the tournaments, it's themselves were the 2 highest owned. The elite priced running backs were barely touched at all. In fact, it was all mid-tier and lower tier guys. I mean, Damian Harris was 5'4", Najee 6'2", Chris Carson 6'1", Mike Davis 5'4", Zeke Elliott 6'2", Montgomery 6'3", Fournette was 5'4", Chase was 4'9". I hope those numbers are right. I'm fairly certain I'm correct on those pricing. I got a really weird brain that kind of remembers all the numbers here. And wide receiver slide over. And basically, here's your highest owned guy on the weekend. Here's the second highest owned. Here's the third. Waddle was in there a ton across our projections as well. Unfortunately, just did not really work out. Had a couple drops, 6 catches, 48 yards, nothing special. I think he fumbled the football too against the Bills. And then, just kind of spreading out the exposure from all those mid-tier wide receivers. Chase, I think, was up to 6K. Lamb, 6'4". Ridley was 7'5". Godwin, 7K. Woods was 5'7". Beasley, 4'6". Robinson, 6'2". 5'7" for T. Higgins. Moore was up to 4'6". Hopkins, 8K. I'm fairly certain I nailed every single one of those numbers as well. I kind of want to go look. Like, I want to see, was Mitch right there with those the prices on these players? That's crazy if I do remember, to be honest. Let's see. Cup, yeah. Najee, yeah. Harris, I think I said 5'8". I don't know. I could do that all day. I love the number stuff. Rain Man, yeah, I got some weird memory when it comes to numbers. It's probably what's helped me over the past couple of years. I don't know. Noah Fan, highest projected owned guy yesterday, and there he is. He is the highest owned guy in his pool. Higbee, another guy we talked about pivoting to, ended up being the second highest owned. Kind of just got off the high end. Waller only 3 shares. George Kittle, next guy, right there at 13%. And then I believe it dropped all the way down to Gronk at 4.7K yesterday. I don't know if anybody was priced higher. Actually, Pitts, I think, was 5.4K, if I'm not mistaken. But here we are. Again, the higher owned defenses kind of show up. Eagles were 2.4. Steelers, though, they were a little over 3K. Patriots were one of the highest price. So were the Niners. And they were all his highest owned defenses. And for stacks, I looked through this already. It's fairly 3-player stack heavy. And there's several 4-player stacks mixed in there, but they're mostly centered around the same game. If you really start digging a little deeper, you saw more Prescott's and Herbert's at 4-player stack. And here's a 5-player stack, and I had a thought about this, and I kind of want to break this down for you real quick. If you're going to be using the chalkier options, it kind of makes sense to use bigger stacks if you're using a chalky option. And I was thinking about it like this. In baseball, if you're going to use the Boston Red Sox, maybe the highest owned, stack on the slate, everyone's going to be stacking the Red Sox. It doesn't really make sense to go out there and stack the Boston Red Sox with 3 batters, because if the chalky Red Sox go bonkers, your 3-player Boston stack is not going to win money, because a large percentage of the field probably went out there and ran 5-player stacks. So that chalky Boston 5-player stacks and all the chalky 5-man Boston stacks, they go nuclear, and you're stuck with your 3-player stack, which did very well, but it's being passed up by 11% of the field that ran 5-mans, and you're one of the 1% of the Boston stacks that used a 4 or a 3-man. And I was thinking about this morning, and I wake up, I think about all this stuff, and I'm trying to, I just always am thinking of how to get better. And I kind of want to start looking at this going forward. When we are on some of these chalkier stacks, we're not saying don't use Herbert, don't use Dak, don't outright fade these guys, but maybe we cap our ownership below what the field's going to be. We've projected ownership yesterday. Justin Herbert, I want to say, was like 9%. We had like 13% on Dak Prescott, something around there. Now, maybe we take 3 to 5% under what the field is. So Dak should have been capped at 8. Herbert may be capped at like 4%. All right. You're going to hit the max cap for those players anyways, based on the projections. And then what I think would have been a good idea is within those stacks, within the whatever that total would have been, 11 to 13% total stacks on that game, we should have gone just large 5-player game stacks. We're saying if we're going to be using chalky stacks, maybe we should be going all in, so that if the chalky stack goes nuclear, totally pops off, that you have, 5 of your 9 lineup spots totally wrapped up into one outcome coming to fruition, in which case you still only need 4 spots to do well, rather than using a chalky stack and having that go off and only really helping your lineup in 3 of the 9 lineup spots. So that's a mistake I feel like I've potentially been doing for years. And it kind of hit me this morning thinking about MLB. And I don't know what you all think about that. I think that's a really unique way to possibly approach this stuff, is that if we're going to be using these chalkier stacks, again, let me kind of execute this for you while we're looking at it. I think it's a fine idea. By the way, I saw people asking, how do you remove things if this is like your eyes don't do well with it? I'm okay. I love numbers. I love data. I want to look at it. But if you didn't, you can click this little arrow, go to show and hide columns, and you can kind of sift through exactly what you want. In fact, if you really wanted to, my friends, you could have this, by the way, every single week show only the projections, ownership. And let's see, do I want all this stuff here? I can't go through it all real quick. But anyways, you could really fine tune this so that it's like, here's your quarterback. You could look at position, team, opponent, Vegas, salary, ownership projection, my projection, your exposure, how much you used. You could remove consistency if you want. That's another one. People have the ability to do this. Dave has allowed you to do whatever you want. I'll never understand why anybody would complain about too much data or not enough data. I need this moved here and that. Guys, she's giving you full control over this. So if you want to remove things and condense it for your, small monitor or something, then go for it. You can. So anyways, I figured that was probably worthwhile looking at. But anyways, let's look at this. So let's say Dak Prescott. We were looking at this and we said, okay, we're going to give 8% to Dak. Justin Herbert, next guy, 11. So let's give him 6%. Now we have 14% of all of our lineups that will get jammed up with these 2 guys. So maybe when we're setting up our stacks here, we say we want at least 2 players, same team, using And we're going to include Chargers, and we will include, who the heck's the other team? Dallas, Chargers, and I can't bring them up. And Dallas, all right? And then also opposing team. So we are basically saying that when the chalkier selections are here, we might want to look at forcing in larger 5-player stacks and just saying, listen, if we're on the chalk, we're going to give ourselves all the upside in the world. And then otherwise, we're just not going to use them. So if they're there in our lineups, we're going all in. Otherwise, let me get some exposure elsewhere. And I think that's a really unique idea. And that's something I'm going to flirt with here in Lineup Rewind over the last 2 days. Over the next 2 days. And I think that could be something that potentially helps you, have more eggs into one basket, so to speak, when you're on the chalk. Because I know a lot of you, and I see a lot of you in Discord, you're on the chalk and then you're upset when it doesn't hit well. Or if it does hit, you're like, man, I only had Tyler Lockett included with Russell Wilson. I wish I had DK Metcalf too, right? Because all the other chalky lineups had DK Metcalf. So that's my point. I want to say that when you are using the chalkier quarterbacks, I wonder if it makes sense to be larger stacks on the chalkier players. All right, so next up. Here's somebody who made a little bit of money. Utica made $790. Nothing special, but more, profit's profit here. It's in the green. So I'm clicking him. I'm going to take a peek. And again, listen, it's another pro doing more 3-player stacks. And then when you're looking at the 4-player stacks, it's centered around certain few games here. So most of the, here's your Tom Brady 4-player, Matt Ryan 4-player, Tannehill 4-player. Here's a Bridgewater 4, another Tannehill 4-player stack, Tannehill 4, or Russell Wilson 4, but that's also a Tennessee and Seattle game. It's the same game. So it's almost like, here we go. We got another pro that said, for these larger stacks, it's only going to be for certain games that I'm going to be playing in. By the way, 50 people watching, mid-20s likes. If you could just hit that like button, if you're enjoying this show right now, if you're like, this is really nice, this is unique. It's free. It's easy to do. You just click the like button. It's totally free. It doesn't cost you a penny to do so. And it helps us out because what it does is it bumps us up for the suggested views, right? So then anybody who goes on the researching DFS and they want to learn, they see this pop up and they can check us out. And that's really the only way we're kind of getting our name out there these days, is just why I switched from Twitch to YouTube. So if you could just do that real quick, just hit that like button for me. That's a very, very nice and easy way to support us. And I'd appreciate that immensely. Let me take a quick drink. You could tell I did a 2.5 hour live stream by myself yesterday where I was just talking all by my lonesome. And I'm still in that zone today where it's like, I'm just going to fill the air with all my thoughts and I'm going to spew them on screen. And hopefully they hit home for you guys. And hopefully you find value here. So that's my goal. Now let's take a peek here at the the exposures. And what do you know, my friends? Another guy here who has a lower exposure cap on the quarterbacks. And we've got 16.7%. And you can see that actually looks like this was probably some type of cap. He probably kept quarterbacks at 17%. This is what happens when you set a hard cap at an individual position. You'll get multiple players that have your highest value rating and your projections that end up getting, all the same exposure. Here's running back. Looks like running backs were probably capped at 35% here. So 17 at quarterbacks, 35 at running backs. And then you have multiple players who in his projections were probably the best values, ended up getting slammed in there at the highest projection cap. Now, this was interesting to me. At Utica's wide receiver position, Allen Robinson here is not really involved in game stacks, right? So we've got Joe Burrow. Yeah, that's fine, but there's no Andy Dalton. So out of the 16 Joe Burrow stacks, if you slide over to the wide receiver position, Allen Robinson was only used in 9 of the 16 Joe Burrow stacks, meaning all that exposure to Allen Robinson here, the other 42 lineups were complete one-offs, meaning he saw value in a player like Allen Robinson, but did not see enough value in the game itself to stack it up far and wide. So we've got another pro here who really is just scattering out the exposure. It's a lot of the same guys you were probably on this weekend. You were probably just on them at much higher rates. And again, tight ends, no more than 26%. It's not like there's a bunch of rando commandos in here. Look at these names. You were on every single one of these guys. Fant, Kittle, Pitts, Higbee, Troutman, Cook. Maybe not these guys. Maybe Komet. I mean, honestly, though, it's like they're not doing anything different than you. They're not using some secret special picks, right? A secret special targets. They're just controlling their ownerships a little bit differently than we are. And they're capping their exposures differently at each position. And from there, they're spreading out their exposure and hoping to catch that magic bullet. Let's see. So we got a loss here, 150 maxer right here, loss. Big loss here. That's a tough one. Let's take a peek at why this didn't go well. I think we looked at him before as well. A ton of variations here. 2s all the way to 4s, a few 5s up here. So the 5-player stack, a lot of 4-player stacks. These are on the chalkier picks, which I also kind of think this aligns with my current thinking of what to do here with the larger stacks. Okay. That's the one last thing, Jules, that I want to look at after I look at all 4 of these. Just go back through and look to see at individual lineups and see if we're starting to find secondary stacks. So let's take a peek at the player exposure and listen. Look, this player lost more than half his investments. It was a $3,200 loss. All right. It doesn't make him bad or anything. I mean, we've seen this name float around the industry for a while, getting big hits and stuff. And when you got a lot of money on the line, you're going to have big swings both ways. All right. So every time you see one of those screenshots, there's probably several events and weeks in a row where there's in between of losing some money. Listen, this is much more aggressive. And this also is going to lead to, big swings, right? A big day where you're winning several $100,000, big day where you're losing tens of thousands because you are inherently investing so much of your money into several scenarios. So if Dak doesn't do well, if Justin Herbert doesn't do well, if this is not a shootout, 50%, 54% of every dollar invested in this game, in this slate, probably burned up immediately. And that's kind of what happened here, and probably why he lost a little over 50% of his money invested. 54% of his money invested here into one game that just did not shoot out. Hit the under by several points, I believe, right? It was 1.5 or so under. And there we go. It's just when you have more wrapped up into less. If the less does not do well, you're going to lose more. All right. It's as simple as that. It's just math. All the chalk wide receivers as well, just at higher rates than these other guys that ended up making money. They capped theirs much lower. Tight ends is the only one really kind of spread out a bunch. Defenses, I suppose, actually at 14% cap here. Now, let's look at some of these winning lineups here. I kind of want to look at their exposures. We're looking for secondary correlation. What that means is Teddy Bridgewater stacked with Sutton. So we're looking to see, is Chris Godwin stacked with a Atlanta player? Well, yes, he is. Here's Kyle Pitts. So we do have an opposing stack within the lineup. All right. So there we go. And we go look at, let's look at a few of them here. We'll look at like maybe 5 or 6 lineups of each guy here. So here's another one. We've got Carr with Ruggs, Waller, and Deontay. That's a 4-player stack. Do we have more? Do we have Panthers with Saints? No. Do we have Titans with Seattle? No. Cardinals with Minnesota? No. Bengals with a Chicago player? No. So that was just a straight up 4-player stack. But these small 2-player stacks, guess what? I bet you every single one of these 2-player stacks, well, maybe I bet you a high probability of them has a secondary stack. Let's see. I honestly don't know. So we have Allen with Stephon Diggs, and then Terrace Marshall against Adam Troutman. So it is a small 2-player stack. So nothing important, but it was there. Here's Wentz with Moele Cox. Nobody on the other side. Not Cooper Kupp either. No secondary stack. Actually, yes, we did. Derrick Henry versus Tyler Lockett. So if you're running a smaller stack out, kind of makes me wonder, should we start looking at doing secondary stacks when we're running 2 or 3-player stacks, setting up a secondary? And, I'm looking at it now too, and I'm thinking to myself, kind of makes sense if you're doing this to maybe even go with, here's the one, Singletary versus Waddle, another running back versus wide receiver is the secondary stack because there's Herbert with Jared Cook. Kind of makes me want to look at it. It's like every time you do a 2 or 3-player stack, you're setting up a secondary stack here. Let's go to, let's see if he did this with 3-player stacks. Is there a secondary in there? Big Ben, Kenyon Drake, Juju Smith-Schuster. And yeah, A.J. Brown with Tyler Lockett. Another secondary stack. Let's take a peek at 3-player stack here. Murray, Rondell Moore, Justin Jefferson. And do we have one? No secondary stack here. Another three-player stack. Let's take a peek here. Yes, we have Fournette against Pitts. Russell Wilson. No secondary there. 3-player stack. Oh, boy. Bridgewater, Sutton, and Fant. Nobody on Jacksonville running it back. No secondary stack either. Oh, no. Stephon Diggs and Myles Gaskin. And like my curiosity here often just really makes me wonder, like, are these just organically happening because the projections are just on these higher total games? Or are these things happening because they're going out of the way to do so? I don't know. And we'll never really totally know. We're just hoping we can identify the trends. I think, honestly, if you start to see this happening week in and week out, that this is something they're doing outright, forcing this in. So that's just a normal 3. Pittman versus Higbee and Kupp. That's a 3-player stack without a quarterback. How interesting. Can't tell if that's organic or not. We'll see if that's in there a few more times. I actually wonder if it is. Look at this. Hines, Pittman with Kupp. Another 3-player stack within a 3-player game stack. Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, A.J. Brown. So basically investing in 2 scenarios. That's it. Just 2 scenarios. Think about it. 6 of his 9 players in that lineup are involved in 2 games. Here he needs the Rams and Colts production to flow through these 3 guys. Some type of shootout. Hines, Pittman, Kupp. And then he needs Wilson, AJ, and Lockett to have a shootout as well. If those 2 games shoot out, all of a sudden, 6 of his 9 roster spots are doing very well, most likely. How about a 4-player? So we've got Ryan, Pitts, Ridley with Chris Godwin. And do we have more stacks? No. So 4-player did not garner a secondary stack. Here's another 3-player stack. Brady, Evans, Ridley. And then we have Hines versus Kupp again. This is a 3-player team stack with Sutton and Hamler. And no secondary stack that I see. Murray, AJ Green, Rondell Moore. No run back from Minnesota. That's wild because I liked all 3 Minnesota wide receivers yesterday. And then no Saints running back, no Dolphins running it back, no Jets running it back, no Bears. All right, just kind of mixed and matched. I mean, here's what I want to do tomorrow for Tuesday's stream then. I want to focus on lowering exposures, especially on the chalkier picks. So tomorrow's testing, we're going to lower exposures. All right, so let me set this up like this. And also, if I'm using the chalkier players, I'm going to be doing large stacks. Let's run one. Let's run one, and then we'll bounce here. Running back, same team, just one. I want to limit players from same. No, I'm not going to limit anything. Hold on. Let me set up a stack rule here, and I want to stack wide receiver with There. Wide receiver with an opposing running back or wide receiver. Not tight end. Let's just go with running back, wide receiver. That's more of what. Oh, no, I don't want it to include these two. Hold on. So I'm setting up a secondary stack as well. Let me force 3-player stacks first. Okay, so I'm forcing 3-player stacks. This is what this means, these two. I'm saying I want a secondary stack. You know, that third option, third wide receiver can be stacked with an opposing running back or an opposing wide receiver in the flex spot. I'm limiting Kareem Hunt and Chubb to only 1 per game. And I'm saying anytime I'm using a chalkier quarterback, I want it to be a 5-player stack, a 5-player game stack. All right. So based on what we looked at again here, I just want to see how this goes. I'm going to set up some very generic rules here. These are not long-term winners, in my opinion. Let me go through this. I'll give a 15% global cap. I'm not even going to create player groups today. I just simply want to go through this quickly. Let me see. Let me grab our projections from yesterday. DK. All right, now I'm going to go through these individual positions, and let's say, I don't know, we'll give Dak like 7, and we'll go 6. So we're going like about 5 or 6% under whatever projected for here. Running backs, you know, let's go up a little bit there. Let's go like 25%, and then let's look at the top couple here and just say we'll just be a little bit. Maybe we'll just be a little bit under the field. All right, kind of just doing the same thing we did at the other position. Wide receivers, shoot, 20%. Keep it low. I just want to keep it low. And then same thing, Keenan. You know, here's the higher owned wide receivers. We'll just 15 for top several here. Tight end, you know, maybe 20%. These look like they're a little bit higher. Defenses were very low. Let's go like 11. Highest owned defense, we'll just drop them down. And I don't know. No freaking clue. I'm literally just trying to see if I can piece this together. No bueno. I mean, it did not work. Didn't even use the chalkier options. Oh, we had no exposure to Kyler Murray. Like, I would not have allowed that to happen, right? Like, he's the highest projected quarterback in our projections. Here's how I combat this. It's so easy. So 15%, let me show you this real quick. 15% is about 22 lineups. Okay, look, 23. Okay, so 23 lineups. Here's how I usually combat this when I see stuff like this. Instead of going through and like thumbing and doing all this garbage, I'll do something like this where I just lock. Oh, that's why we're running into an exposure issue. Is that because, hold on, watch. Here's what I was wondering about, and it makes sense in my head. I don't know if I know how to explain it. So if I put 25% for the wide receivers, is it going to run? It did for a lot more. Well, anyways, often, this is all the stuff I wanted to do tomorrow. But anyways, often when I run these out, when I see like a highest owned guy just not being used, you know, because of how my settings are set up, I go back through there and I freaking lock the guy in. My friends, it's that easy to me. Like, I'll literally just lock a guy in, crunch out for how many you need, and then I would crunch out like the rest of them. Listen, we're going down a rabbit hole. I can feel myself getting pulled into it. And I know that now we've got, 60-something people watching. Hit that like button real quick for me. We only have half the people hit the like, all enjoying free content, free research. Listen, we spent the first, how many minutes are we? 40 minutes in. We spent the first half hour on lineup study. Next 5 minutes or so, we've started to dive into setting up, trying to emulate kind of, some of these stacking rules. And again, this is bare bones stuff. Like, I do not have group set up here, right? Like, I don't have group set up. Again, this is bare bones, right? Like, this is just as simple as it gets. And we know this is not how you win in tournaments. You need to set your groups and everything. So maybe what we'll do tomorrow is we'll put a little extra effort in there. I'll make some lineup building groups. I want to see if we can turn a profit here using some of these settings that we have kind of identified that maybe are possibly being used by those 4 or 5 pros we saw today. I think tomorrow we should also look at a few more pros before we do our lineup rewinds, part of the stream, and see if we can prepare for week 3 and just try to get better. We have added 2 things that we're going to be doing for the website here. And I figure I'll show you this now because I know I just have so many people that just don't hop in Discord until later. We're adding 2 things. We're going to I'm adding targets and core section to Playbook this week. I've been doing this long form written article and then a 25 or 30 minute analysis video, also all included in the Playbook. And then I screenshot exposures and things like that. I kind of want to add targets and cores. This is going to be so that for people who kind of struggle to comprehend what I'm strategizing in my write-up, they'll have a list, right? Because yesterday I said, I'm kind of off of Dak and Herbert. They're just highly owned. And meanwhile, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, these guys all have implied team totals of 27 plus points, higher than both Dallas and the Chargers, which were the 2 highest owned quarterbacks. It didn't make sense to me. So I want to talk about that in a list form for members. And then also CG is going to be working on a quick article where it's you look at it and it's going to be a public perception leverage article, right? Here's what the public's doing. Here's how you can leverage what they're doing. And it's going to be very quick. It's not going to be this huge, crazy 4,000 word write-up or something that you'll see around the industry. It's going to be, here's the answer, right? It's an answer key. Or here's where the public is. Here's how you can leverage that. And then it's not necessarily saying, do this. You need to do this. It's going to say, here's what the public's going to be doing. If you're in a very large tournament, this is a way to leverage that. And then you make your decision on if you think the projections, the ownership, the upside, the probability of them hitting the upside all makes sense for you in a tournament, then you can go ahead and do that. So we've added some really cool stuff. That's all going to be happening in week 3. I think that'll be totally helpful for you. So is there a video on how to do groups? Yeah, I actually have it on YouTube. If you go through and look at my Fantasy Cruncher tutorials, you'll see I have a tutorial list somewhere in here. Just click on my name, and then my friend, you will actually see playlists. Here they are. Go through my playlist. I have a groups tutorial right here on the Fantasy Cruncher tutorials. So it's all there. Hit the like button on your way out. I see 60 people watching, 45. That's great. Thank you very much. That's super helpful long-term for us. I'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock. All right. Appreciate y'all. Good luck tonight, Monday Night Football. We got a couple of videos up, pre-lock stream tonight from TMA. Projections, all that stuff's getting updated. Tools getting updated. We are also splitting up the player pools this weekend. Scrosby, Mr. Alive Finals himself, he is going to be doing the FanDuel and DraftKings player pools going forward. So he'll have his player pools there. He'll give them away to you. And short, brief notes for players and priority picks and all that stuff will be listed. So thank you, Scrosby. So yeah, we're making some additions and we're modifying things as we go. Week 3 is going to be our best week. I can't wait for it. And it kind of starts a little bit today, but mostly tomorrow. We'll set our eyes forward on getting better together every single day. So I'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Good luck tonight. And hopefully somebody hits the nuts.